The stranger from Earth. The shuttle shuddered slightly as it breached the atmosphere of Galvoria AX, a planet that shimmered like an emerald jewel in the vast expanse of space. Commander Nathan Hale gripped the armrests of his seat, his fingers digging into the worn leather. The turbulence, a result of the planet's dense magnetic fields, was a small price to pay for the opportunity to explore a world untouched by Earth's influence. Nathan wasn't just an explorer. He was Earth's envoy to the newly allied Confederation of Worlds, a coalition of alien civilizations working toward peaceful coexistence. "Prepare for landing," the pilot announced, her voice steady despite the slight shake of the vessel. Nathan glanced out of the porthole, marveling at the sight of Galvoria's vast, rolling landscape. Towering spires of metallic rock jutted into the sky, their surfaces gleaming like liquid silver. Rivers, glowing faintly with bioluminescent algae, snaked through valleys of luminous vegetation. The entire planet seemed alive with light and energy. The shuttle touched down on a circular landing pad carved into a cliffside, overlooking a city that defied human imagination. Buildings floated mid-air, tethered by energy, streams glowing in soft hues of blue and violet. The Galvorians had perfected levitation technology, something Earth scientists could only dream of. Nathan grabbed his pack and stepped onto the platform, taking his first breath of Galvoria's air. It was thick, humid, and carried a faint, citrus-like aroma. A small delegation awaited him. At the front stood an alien woman who could only be described as otherworldly. Her translucent skin refracted the sunlight into rainbows, and her eyes glowed like molten gold. She wore a fitted suit of iridescent scales, and her presence exuded an air of authority. "I am Envoy Cyrilin, your liaison during your stay," she said, her voice a harmonious blend of musical notes. "Welcome to Galvoria AX, Commander Hale. We've heard much about the resilience and ingenuity of your kind." Nathan inclined his head, offering a polite smile. "Thank you, Envoy Cyrilin. I'm honored to represent Earth in this historic exchange." Cyrilin's golden eyes scanned him with an intensity that was both curious and cautious. "Follow me. Your quarters are prepared, and we have much to discuss." Nathan trailed behind the envoy, his boots clicking against the smooth obsidian-like surface of the walkway. As they moved through the city, he couldn't help but notice the way Galvorians stopped to stare. It wasn't hostile, but their fascination was palpable. To them, he was as much a novelty as their city was to him. They arrived at a tall, spiraling structure perched precariously on the edge of a waterfall. The water cascaded into an abyss, glowing faintly as it vanished into the mist below. The building itself seemed to hum with energy, its walls shifting colors like a living organism. "This will be your residence," Cyrilin announced, gesturing toward the entrance. The doors parted with a soft hiss, revealing an interior that blended organic and mechanical elements seamlessly. Vines adorned the walls, pulsing faintly with light, while sleek furniture hovered a few inches above the ground. Nathan stepped inside, marveling at the space. A large panoramic window offered a breathtaking view of the floating city and the endless forest beyond. "This is incredible," he murmured, setting his pack down. Cyrilin tilted her head slightly, her expression unreadable. "Our design reflects harmony with our environment. We hope you find it accommodating." "It's more than accommodating," Nathan assured her, turning to face her. "Thank you." Before she could respond, a loud chime echoed through the room, and a holographic display appeared in the air. A Galvorian with stark white markings on their translucent skin filled the projection. "Envoy Cyrilin, there's been an incident at the outer ridge. The veil has been breached." Cyrilin's serene demeanor faltered for the briefest moment, her glowing eyes narrowing. "I'll attend to it immediately," she replied, the projection vanishing as quickly as it had appeared. "What's the veil?" Nathan asked, sensing the urgency in her tone. "It's a barrier protecting one of our most sacred sites," Cyrilin explained, her voice tight. "Its breach is unprecedented. I must investigate." Nathan hesitated. "I'd like to come with you." Cyrilin's gaze sharpened. This is a matter of Galvorian security. Your presence could complicate matters. With respect, envoy, I'm here to build trust and understanding between our worlds. If there's something serious happening, I'd like to help, if I can," Nathan countered, meeting her gaze. For a moment, the room was silent, the faint hum of the walls the only sound. Finally, Saralyn nodded. "Very well. But stay close, and do exactly as I say." They departed swiftly, boarding a sleek, disc-shaped vehicle that sped silently over the terrain. The farther they traveled from the city, the denser the forest became. Massive trees with glowing canopies towered over them, their roots forming natural bridges and tunnels. Strange creatures darted through the underbrush, their luminescent forms barely visible in the shadows. When they reached the outer ridge, Nathan saw the veil for the first time. It was a towering wall of light, shimmering with every color imaginable. It looked almost alive, shifting and pulsing like a heartbeat. But something was wrong. A jagged tear marred its surface, and dark, tendril-like shapes seeped through the opening, writhing against the light. Galvorian guards stood at the breach, their weapons trained on the tendrils. Saralyn approached the scene with authority, issuing commands in a language Nathan couldn't understand. He stayed back, observing the chaotic scene. The tendrils seemed to respond to the presence of the guards, recoiling slightly before surging forward again. "What are those?" Nathan asked, stepping closer to Saralyn. "They are the shadow forms," she said grimly. "Entities from the void beyond our dimension. They've never breached the veil before." Nathan frowned. "Why now? Did something weaken the veil?" Saralyn didn't answer immediately. Her golden eyes flicked to him, her expression unreadable. "That is what we must determine." One of the guards shouted something in alarm as a tendril lashed out, striking the ground with enough force to leave a smoldering crater. Nathan's instincts kicked in, and he grabbed a fallen weapon from a nearby guard. Its design was alien, but he quickly figured out how to activate it. "Commander Hale, what are you doing?" Saralyn demanded. "Helping," Nathan replied, firing a bolt of energy at the tendril. The shot hit its mark, causing the tendril to recoil with a guttural screech. He turned to Saralyn, his expression firm. "You said this was about trust, right? Let me prove we're more than just allies on paper." For a moment, Saralyn looked at him, her gaze softening slightly. Then she nodded. "Very well, Commander. Let's seal the breach, together." Breach in the veil. The air near the breach crackled with tension as the luminescent veil flickered erratically, its usually steady shimmer disrupted by the jagged tear. Tendrils of inky blackness writhed and probed the edges of the tear, testing the weakened barrier like a predator circling wounded prey. Nathan tightened his grip on the alien weapon, its lightweight but unfamiliar design vibrating faintly in his hands. He could feel the weight of Saralyn's gaze on him, her earlier skepticism replaced by a mixture of curiosity and urgency. "The shadow forms feed on instability," Saralyn explained, her voice calm but edged with tension. "They thrive in chaos and exploit weaknesses in dimensional rifts. If they breach fully, they will consume everything." Nathan nodded, keeping his eyes on the writhing tendrils. "Then we stop them before that happens. What's the plan?" Saralyn extended her hands, and a holographic map materialized in the air between them, displaying the tear in vivid detail. The veil's energy is maintained by 3 anchor points. One of them has been severely damaged, likely from an external force. We need to reactivate it to stabilize the barrier. Nathan studied the map. "Where's the anchor?" She pointed toward a towering crystalline structure on the far side of the breach, its surface dim and cracked. "There. But the shadow forms will not let us approach without resistance." Nathan smirked, his earthborn determination shining through. "Good thing they've handled resistance before." Saralyn arched a translucent brow, but didn't argue. Instead, she gestured to a group of Galvorian guards nearby, issuing commands in her musical native tongue. The guards moved swiftly, forming a defensive line near the breach to hold back the advancing tendrils. Their weapons emitted focused beams of light that momentarily repelled the shadow forms, but the creatures quickly regrouped, their movements more aggressive and deliberate with each passing moment. "Nathan," Saralyn said, turning to him. "We'll need to move fast. I can guide the energy transfer once we reach the anchor, but I'll need time. Can you hold them off?" He glanced at the writhing shadows and nodded. "You fix the anchor. I'll buy you that time." Without waiting for a reply, Nathan darted toward the crystalline structure, his boots crunching against the alien terrain. The ground beneath him pulsed faintly with light, a reminder of the planet's living, breathing energy. Behind him, Saralyn followed closely, her movements as fluid and precise as the currents of a river. As they neared the anchor, the shadow forms seemed to sense their intentions. Tendrils surged forward, their oily, unnatural movements accompanied by a sound that was neither a hiss nor a growl, but something deeply unsettling. Nathan raised his weapon and fired, the beam of concentrated energy slicing through the nearest tendril. It recoiled with a shriek, retreating momentarily, but another quickly took its place. "These things don't scare easy," Nathan muttered, firing again and dodging to avoid a lashing strike. "They are not meant to," Saralyn called back, her hands already moving to interface with the damaged anchor. A series of glowing glyphs appeared in the air before her, and she began manipulating them with swift, precise gestures. "Their purpose is to overwhelm and consume." "Great," Nathan said through gritted teeth, firing another shot. "Overwhelming and consuming are exactly what I was hoping to deal with today." A particularly large tendril slammed into the ground nearby, sending up a spray of glowing dust. Nathan shielded his eyes, rolling to the side as another tendril lashed out where he'd just been standing. The weapon in his hands vibrated, signaling it was nearing a recharge cycle. He glanced back at Saralyn, who was fully engrossed in her task, the dim crystal structure beginning to glow faintly under her touch. "Almost there," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. Nathan didn't reply. He was too focused on the shadow forms, which were growing bolder with each passing second. He switched tactics, using the terrain to his advantage. Dodging behind a jagged rock formation, he waited for a tendril to strike, then leaped out and fired at its base, severing it cleanly. The tendril writhed violently before disintegrating into a cloud of dark mist. The victory was short-lived. More tendrils emerged from the breach, their movements more coordinated and aggressive. Nathan's weapon finally gave out, its energy reserves depleted. He tossed it aside and grabbed a nearby shard of crystalline rock, using it as an improvised blade. It wasn't ideal, but he wasn't about to go down without a fight. Just as a tendril surged toward him, a blinding pulse of light erupted from the anchor. Nathan stumbled backward, shielding his eyes as the tendrils recoiled en masse, shrieking in unison. The glow from the anchor intensified, spreading outward in rippling waves that sealed the tear in the veil. Within moments, the breach was gone, and the shadow forms vanished, leaving behind only an eerie silence. Nathan turned to see Saralyn standing by the now fully restored anchor, her translucent skin glowing faintly with residual energy. She looked exhausted but triumphant. "It is done," she said, her voice softer now. Nathan approached her, dropping the crystalline shard and brushing the dust off his clothes. "Nice work. For a moment there, I wasn't sure we'd make it." Saralyn tilted her head, a small smile playing on her lips. "You performed admirably, Commander. Few would have stood their ground against such creatures." "Guess humans are just stubborn like that," Nathan replied with a grin. "So what caused the breach in the first place? Those things didn't just appear out of nowhere." Saralyn's expression darkened. "That is the troubling question. The veil is designed to withstand immense pressure, but something, or someone, must have weakened it from the outside." Nathan frowned, his mind racing. "You think this was deliberate?" "I cannot be certain yet," Saralyn admitted, her golden eyes scanning the now quiet landscape. But if it was, then we may be facing an enemy far more dangerous than the shadow forms. Nathan nodded, his earlier relief replaced by a sense of foreboding. Then we'd better find out who, or what, is behind this before they strike again. Sarah Lynn met his gaze, her expression resolute. Agreed. And if you are willing, Commander Hale, I would value your assistance in uncovering the truth. Nathan smiled, his earth-born determination shining through once again. Count me in. Let's figure this out, together. As they began their journey back to the city, Nathan couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of something much larger. The breach in the veil had been sealed, but the questions it raised were far from answered. And for better or worse, he knew his time on Galvoria AX was about to become far more complicated than he'd ever anticipated. Shadows of betrayal. The return to Galvoria's floating city was eerily quiet. The gleaming structures, which Nathan had previously admired for their grace and ingenuity, now seemed to loom with a menacing edge. The shadow forms had been repelled, and the veil restored, but the deeper mystery of the breach gnawed at him. Sarah Lynn, walking beside him with her usual fluidity, was unusually silent. Her glowing golden eyes were fixed ahead, her expression unreadable. As they entered the city, the streets buzzed with subdued activity. Galvorian citizens moved through the levitating walkways, their translucent forms flickering faintly in the dim light. News of the breach had clearly spread, and though there was no outright panic, an undercurrent of unease hung heavy in the air. Nathan broke the silence. You think it was sabotage, don't you? Sarah Lynn glanced at him, her expression tightening. I suspect so. The veil has stood for centuries, unyielding even under natural disasters. For it to fail now, and in such a precise way, suggests intention rather than accident. Nathan frowned. Do you have any idea who might be responsible? Sarah Lynn's gaze darkened. Galvoria has long been a beacon of stability in the Confederation of Worlds, but such prominence comes with enemies. Some factions resent our influence, believing our advanced technology gives us too much power. Others fear what they do not understand. As they reached Sarah Lynn's quarters, a message hovered in the air just outside the door, a glowing glyph that pulsed softly. She waved her hand, and the glyph unfolded into a projection of a Galvorian, with stark white markings and deep crimson eyes. Envoy Sarah Lynn, the figure said, their tone clipped and formal. The Council has convened an emergency session. You are required immediately. Sarah Lynn dismissed the projection with a flick of her hand, exhaling sharply. It seems the Council shares our concerns. Nathan nodded. Good. Maybe they'll have some answers. Sarah Lynn gave him a faint smile. The Council is rarely a source of answers, Commander. More often, they are a source of complications. Nathan followed her into the building, his curiosity growing. Sarah Lynn led him to an expansive chamber dominated by a circular table made of a material that seemed to ripple like water. Around it sat the Council members, an eclectic mix of alien species, each more unique and imposing than the last. Their eyes turned to Nathan as he entered, their expressions a blend of curiosity, skepticism, and thinly veiled hostility. Who is this outsider? One of the Council members demanded, their voice a low, resonant growl. Sarah Lynn stepped forward, her tone firm. Commander Nathan Hale of Earth. He assisted in the restoration of the veil and has proven himself a valuable ally. The Council murmured amongst themselves, their voices overlapping in a chaotic symphony. Finally, a tall, willowy being with elongated limbs and eyes that shimmered like starlight addressed Nathan directly. Commander Hale, do you understand the gravity of the situation you have involved yourself in? Nathan met their gaze, his voice steady. I understand that the veil was breached and something dangerous came through. If there's a bigger threat, I want to help stop it. The willowy figure tilted its head, as though weighing his words. Your willingness is noted. However, this matter is deeply entwined with our own politics. Your presence could complicate an already delicate situation. Before Nathan could respond, Saralyn spoke, her voice sharp. The commander has already proven his worth. If we are to uncover the truth behind this attack, we will need every resource available, including his insight. The council murmured again, their voices softer this time. Finally, the willowy figure nodded. Very well. But tread carefully, envoy Saralyn. The trust we extend to your earthling is limited. With that, the council dismissed them, and Nathan followed Saralyn out of the chamber, his mind racing. Once they were alone, he turned to her. What was that about? They didn't seem thrilled to have me here. Saralyn sighed, her usual composure slipping slightly. The council is cautious, perhaps overly so. Galvoria's alliances are fragile, and introducing a human, an outsider, into this crisis raises concerns about interference. Nathan frowned. Interference? I'm just trying to help. And I believe you, Saralyn said, her voice softening. But not everyone will share that view. We must tread carefully. As they walked through the corridors, Nathan noticed a faint flickering light in the corner of his vision. At first, he thought it was just another feature of Galvoria's living architecture, but the flicker persisted, almost like a shadow darting just out of sight. Do you see that? He asked, stopping in his tracks. Saralyn turned, following his gaze. Her golden eyes narrowed. I do. Stay close. The flicker grew more pronounced, coalescing into a faint, humanoid shape that seemed to shimmer in and out of existence. It moved with unnatural speed, darting down a side corridor. Without thinking, Nathan took off after it, Saralyn close behind. Wait, she called, but Nathan didn't stop. His instincts told him that this wasn't a random phenomenon. It was connected to the breach. The figure led them deeper into the city, through twisting pathways and shadowed alcoves. Finally, it stopped in a dimly lit chamber, its form stabilizing just enough for Nathan to make out its features. It was humanoid but faintly translucent, its body composed of the same dark energy as the shadow forms. Yet its eyes were bright and intelligent, filled with something Nathan could only describe as desperation. Why did you follow me? The figure asked, its voice echoing faintly, as though it came from a great distance. Nathan stepped forward cautiously. Because I think you know something about the breach. Am I right? The figure hesitated, its form flickering. The breach was no accident. But if I tell you more, they will find me. Who? Saralyn pressed, her tone urgent. Who will find you? The figure's eyes darted around the chamber, its body trembling. The ones who created me. The ones who tore the veil. They seek power, and they will stop at nothing to obtain it. Nathan exchanged a glance with Saralyn. Why are you telling us this? Why help us? Because I was not meant to be like them, the figure said, its voice softer now. I was created from the shadows, but I am not their slave. I wish to see them stopped. Before Nathan could ask another question, the figure began to dissolve, its form disintegrating into a cloud of dark mist. Its final words lingered in the air. Beware the council. Not all are what they seem. The chamber fell silent, and Nathan turned to Saralyn, his expression grim. Looks like we're not just dealing with external enemies. This is an inside job. Saralyn nodded, her golden eyes filled with resolve. Then we must be vigilant. If the council cannot be trusted, we'll have to uncover the truth on our own. As they left the chamber, Nathan couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The stakes had just been raised, and he knew the road ahead would be even more dangerous. But one thing was clear. Whoever was behind the breach had underestimated the resilience of humanity and the determination of Galvoria's defenders. Whispers in the shadows. Nathan Hale's mind raced as he and Saralyn retraced their steps through the labyrinthine corridors of the Galvorian city. The encounter with the shadowy figure had shaken him, not because of its otherworldly nature, but because of its ominous warning. Beware the council. Not all are what they seem. The council had exuded an air of authority, their presence dominating the chamber they convened in. But now Nathan couldn't help but scrutinize every detail of their earlier interaction. Had one of them orchestrated the breach? And if so, why? He glanced at Cerilyn, who was walking briskly beside him, her expression as unreadable as ever. Her golden eyes flicked toward him, sensing his scrutiny. "You're troubled," she said simply. Nathan hesitated, then nodded. "That thing back there, do you think it was telling the truth?" Cerilyn stopped, turning to face him fully. "The shadow forms are deceptive by nature, but this one seemed different. It wanted to help, and that is rare among its kind." "Rare, but not impossible," Nathan countered. "It mentioned being created, crafted somehow. That doesn't sound like the natural evolution of a being." Cerilyn's lips tightened, her translucent skin shimmering faintly. "It doesn't. If what it said is true, someone is manipulating the shadow forms for their own ends, and that someone is operating within our city." The weight of her words hung heavily between them. Before Nathan could respond, Cerilyn's communication glyph flared to life. A holographic projection of a Galvorian guard appeared, their expression tense. "Envoy Cerilyn, there's been another incident," the guard reported. "A second breach has formed near the crystal nexus." Cerilyn's eyes widened. "The nexus? That's impossible. Its energy field is self-sustaining." "Not anymore," the guard said grimly. "The barrier is failing. We need you there immediately." Nathan's stomach clenched. The crystal nexus, as Cerilyn had explained earlier, was the heart of Galvoria's energy system, a colossal crystalline structure that powered the Veil and much of the city. If it fell, the entire planet would be vulnerable. "We're on our way," Cerilyn said, dismissing the projection. She turned to Nathan, her voice urgent. "The nexus is critical. If it collapses, the Veil won't just weaken, it will shatter entirely." "Then we don't have a choice," Nathan said, already moving. "Let's go." The crystal nexus was a marvel of Galvorian engineering. Towering above the surrounding city, it pulsed with radiant energy, its surface a kaleidoscope of shifting colors. But as Nathan and Cerilyn approached, the sight that greeted them was anything but awe-inspiring. Tendrils of dark energy coiled around the nexus, their oily black forms seeping into the cracks of the crystalline structure. Galvorian guards were already on the scene, their weapons trained on the tendrils, but their efforts to repel the intruding force were proving futile. "This is worse than I imagined," Cerilyn murmured, her voice laced with dread. "The shadow forms are actively corrupting the nexus." Nathan scanned the scene, his gaze locking onto a group of figures near the base of the structure. Unlike the guards, these individuals weren't engaging the shadow forms. They were observing, their faces obscured by cloaks. "Who are they?" Nathan asked, pointing. Cerilyn's eyes narrowed. "I don't know, but they don't belong here." Nathan's instincts screamed danger. He grabbed Cerilyn's arm, pulling her behind cover as one of the cloaked figures raised their hand. A surge of dark energy erupted from the figure's palm, striking the nexus and sending a shockwave through the area. The guards were thrown back, their weapons clattering to the ground. "We need to stop them," Nathan said, his voice low but urgent. Cerilyn nodded, her composure returning. "Follow my lead." They moved quickly, weaving through the chaos until they were within striking distance of the cloaked figures. Cerilyn extended her hands, summoning a shimmering barrier of light that cut through the shadowy tendrils and temporarily shielded the nexus. The cloaked figures turned, their faces still hidden, but their movements betrayed surprise. "You will not corrupt our nexus," Cerilyn declared, her voice resonating with authority. The tallest of the figures stepped forward, their voice cold and mechanical. "The nexus is a relic of a bygone era. Its destruction is necessary for progress." "Progress," Nathan barked, stepping into view. "By unleashing creatures that want to destroy everything. That's your idea of progress." The figure tilted their head slightly. "You misunderstand, human. Destruction is not the goal. It is merely the means to an end. The Confederation has stagnated. A new order is required. Nathan clenched his fists. You think chaos is the answer? You're insane. The figure raised a hand, dark energy gathering at their fingertips. Perhaps, but it is the only way. Before Nathan could react, the figure unleashed a blast of shadow energy. Sarah-Lane moved swiftly, her barrier absorbing the attack, but the force sent her stumbling. Nathan charged forward, tackling the cloaked figure to the ground. The two grappled briefly before Nathan ripped the hood away, revealing a face he didn't expect. It was a Galvorian council member. You, Nathan hissed, his mind reeling. You're behind this. The counselor sneered, their translucent features twisted with disdain. You humans are so predictable, always assuming you can fix what you do not understand. Nathan tightened his grip. Why? Why betray your own people? The counselor's eyes gleamed with malice. Because the old ways must die for the new to be born. Before Nathan could press further, the counselor's form began to dissolve into shadow, slipping through his fingers like smoke. They reappeared a few feet away, their allies closing ranks around them. This isn't over, the counselor said, their voice echoing ominously. With a final surge of energy, the cloaked figures vanished, leaving the nexus battered but intact. Sarah-Lane approached, her expression grim. Did you see their face? Nathan nodded, his jaw tight. It was one of your council members. Sarah-Lane's eyes darkened, a rare flicker of anger crossing her features. Then the betrayal runs deeper than I feared. The tendrils of shadow energy receded, and the nexus glow began to stabilize. But the damage was done. Nathan looked at Sarah-Lane, his voice firm. We need answers, and we need them now. Sarah-Lane nodded. Agreed. But if the council is compromised, we'll have to tread carefully. We cannot trust anyone but ourselves. As they left the nexus, Nathan's mind churned with questions. The stakes had just been raised again, and the line between friend and foe was growing blurrier by the minute. One thing was certain. Whoever was behind the breaches wasn't just after Galvoria's power, they were after control of the galaxy itself. The Council's web of deceit. Nathan Hale and Sarah-Lane stood on the observation platform overlooking the crystal nexus, its once pristine glow now dulled by the residual corruption of the shadow forms. The cloaked figure's parting words echoed in Nathan's mind. The old ways must die for the new to be born. His hands clenched at his sides. This wasn't just sabotage. It was a declaration of war from within. Sarah-Lane's golden eyes scanned the city below, her expression grim. The council has always been a place of politics and power, but treachery. This is unprecedented. Nathan scoffed, his frustration bubbling to the surface. Unprecedented or not, we've got at least one traitor sitting in that room, plotting who knows what. We can't just wait for them to make their next move. Sarah-Lane turned to face him, her usual composure cracking slightly. You're right, Commander. But confronting them directly without proof would be suicide. The Council has influence across the Confederation. If we accuse the wrong person, we could ignite a political collapse. Nathan sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. Then we find proof. Whoever's behind this is bold enough to strike at the nexus and manipulate the shadow forms. They'll slip up somewhere. Sarah-Lane nodded. Agreed. And there's one place where we might start. The Council archives. Every decision, every communication, and every action the Council takes is recorded there. If there's a connection between the traitor and the breaches, it'll be in those records. Nathan frowned. And I'm guessing access to those archives isn't exactly open to the public. A faint smile tugged at Sarah-Lane's lips. No, but as an envoy, I have clearance. The challenge will be retrieving the data without arousing suspicion. Subtlety isn't exactly my strong suit, Nathan admitted, but I'll follow your lead. Sarah-Lane's smile faded, her tone serious. We'll need to move quickly. If the counselor we encountered realizes we're onto them, They'll cover their tracks. The council archives were housed in a sleek, towering spire at the center of the city. The structure glowed faintly in the dim light, its surface seemingly alive with shifting patterns. Sarah Lynn led the way, her movements confident and deliberate. Nathan followed closely, his senses on high alert. Inside, the spire was eerily quiet. The air was cool, and the walls hummed faintly with the energy of countless data streams. Sarah Lynn approached a terminal embedded in the wall and placed her hand on its surface. The terminal lit up, and a soft, melodic voice greeted her. "Envoy Sarah Lynn. Access granted." Nathan watched as she navigated the interface with practiced ease. Streams of data flowed across the holographic display, symbols and text in a language he couldn't begin to decipher. After a moment, Sarah Lynn paused, her eyes narrowing. "Found something?" Nathan asked. Sarah Lynn nodded. Communications flagged for irregular patterns. They're heavily encrypted, but the source is concerning. They originate from a restricted sector, one that shouldn't have any activity. Restricted how? It's an abandoned research facility on the outskirts of the city, she explained. It was decommissioned decades ago after an experiment went wrong. Nathan raised an eyebrow. "Let me guess. Nobody thought to check if someone moved back in." Sarah Lynn's lips pressed into a thin line. "The facility is shielded, making surveillance difficult. It would be the perfect place to hide something, or someone." Before they could delve deeper, a sharp alarm blared through the archive. Nathan tensed, his hand instinctively reaching for his weapon. Sarah Lynn's expression darkened. "They know we're here," she said, her voice low. "How?" Nathan asked, scanning their surroundings. The terminal's display abruptly shut down, replaced by a glowing red glyph. Sarah Lynn swore softly in her native tongue. Someone triggered a countermeasure. "They're purging the data." Nathan grabbed her arm. "Then we don't have time to sit around. Can you retrieve anything?" Sarah Lynn's fingers danced across the interface, her movements frantic. "I'm copying the flight communications now, but the process is slow. Whoever set this up knows what they're doing." The sound of footsteps echoed from the corridor behind them. Nathan turned, his heart pounding. "We've got company." The first figure to enter the archive chamber was a Galvorian guard. But something was wrong. Their movements were stiff, unnatural, and their eyes glowed faintly with the same dark energy Nathan had seen in the shadow forms. "Shadow-possessed," he whispered to Sarah Lynn. She nodded grimly. "It's rare, but possible. The corruption isn't limited to the veil. It can infect living beings as well." The guard raised their weapon, and Nathan didn't hesitate. He fired first, the bolt of energy striking the guard in the chest. The corrupted Galvorian stumbled but didn't fall. Instead, they advanced, their movements jerky but relentless. "Great," Nathan muttered, firing again. This time, the guard collapsed, their body dissolving into a dark mist. Sarah Lynn finished copying the data, her voice urgent. "We need to go. Now." Nathan nodded, covering her as they made their way out of the archive. More corrupted guards appeared, their glowing eyes and erratic movements a chilling reminder of the shadow form's influence. Nathan and Sarah Lynn fought their way through the corridors, the hum of energy weapons and the hiss of dissolving shadows filling the air. When they finally emerged into the open, Nathan gasped for breath, his heart pounding. Sarah Lynn looked equally shaken, her usually composed demeanor cracking under the weight of the situation. "Did you get what we needed?" he asked. Sarah Lynn held up a small crystalline device. "I have the communications, but we need to decode them before they're of any use." Nathan glanced back at the archive spire, now swarming with corrupted guards. Let's hope it was worth it. Back at Sarah Lynn's quarters, the tension was palpable as they worked to decode the encrypted messages. Nathan paced the room, his mind racing with possibilities. Finally, Sarah Lynn spoke, her voice tight. "It's worse than I thought." Nathan stopped, turning to her. "What do you mean?" She gestured to the decoded message displayed on a holographic screen. It contained detailed plans for sabotaging the Nexus, manipulating the shadow forms, and most chillingly, toppling the Confederation itself. The traitors aren't just targeting Galvoria, Cerulean said. They're targeting the entire Confederation. This isn't just a coup, it's a war. Nathan's stomach turned. And they've already got the shadow forms as their weapon. Cerulean nodded. If we don't stop them, the entire galaxy could fall into chaos. Nathan's jaw tightened. Then we'd better figure out how to stop them, and fast. As they delved deeper into the messages, a single name kept appearing, tied to every act of sabotage and betrayal: Counselor Virak. Nathan's fists clenched. The traitor had a name. And now, they had a target.